I didn't react when my parents gave everything to my brother. I didn't interrupt, didn't question, didn't even look surprised, because the moment they said, "It all goes to him," I already knew something they didn't. This wasn't the first time they had decided this. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't emotional. It was planned. And I knew that, because I had already heard them say it before. Just not in front of everyone. And this time, they didn't realize. I wasn't just listening, I was recording. So when I finally spoke and said, "Play the recording," that's when the room changed. Not loudly, not instantly, but in a way you could feel before anyone even spoke. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 33 years old, and this happened in Denver, Colorado. Before we continue, if you've ever stayed quiet while people made decisions about your life without you, subscribe and tell me in the comments, would you have exposed them or stayed silent? Now let me take you back. Because this didn't start at that meeting. It started the night. I heard something I was never supposed to hear. Growing up, nothing in our house was ever said directly. There were no rules, no announcements, no obvious favoritism, but you could feel it. In the way decisions were made, in who got listened to, and who didn't. I remember one night clearly. We were both at the dinner table. Marcus asked for a new car. My parents didn't hesitate. They started discussing options, budget, timing, like it was already decided. A week later, I asked for help paying for a course I needed. My father said, "Let's not rush into unnecessary expenses. Same house, same parents, different answers, and no one explained why." Marcus wasn't treated better loudly, he was treated better consistently, and I learned something early. In this house, being quiet meant surviving. As we got older, money stopped being invisible, not openly discussed, but always present. Small comments, careful wording, future planning, security, keeping things stable. But every conversation had the same direction. Marcus would handle things. Marcus would manage things. Marcus would receive things. And me? I was included. Just enough to not question it. It wasn't something they told me. It was something they assumed I would accept. It happened on a random night. No argument, no tension, nothing unusual. I had gone back home to pick up some documents. I should have left, but I didn't. Because as I passed the hallway, I heard voices. Low, careful, controlled. The kind of voices people use when they don't want to be heard. I slowed down. The light in the room was half on. The door wasn't fully closed. And then, I heard my name, and something about the way they said it made me stop completely. "She doesn't need to know yet." My mother's voice, calm, certain, like this had already been decided. My father responded immediately. "It'll just complicate things." Complicate what? I stood there, not moving, not breathing properly. Because this didn't sound like a discussion, it sounded like a conclusion, like something had already been finalized, and I wasn't part of it. Then Marcus spoke. "They'll understand eventually." Confident, relaxed, like there was nothing uncertain about it. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't a conversation, it was confirmation. They weren't deciding, they had already decided. About the inheritance, about ownership, about everything going to him. Without telling me. Most people would have left, pretended they didn't hear anything, avoided the situation. But I didn't move, because something shifted in me. Not anger, not shock. Clarity. A very quiet, very sharp clarity. And in that moment, I made a decision. If they were going to hide the truth, I wasn't going to confront it. I was going to capture it. I took out my phone slowly, carefully, making sure the floor didn't creak, making sure my breathing stayed quiet, and I pressed record. I didn't know how long I would stand there, or what exactly I would capture, but I knew one thing. This mattered, because truth, when spoken privately, is always more honest than truth spoken in front of people. What I recorded wasn't emotional. That's what made it powerful. There was no anger, no hesitation, just calm decisions. Numbers, assets, timing, and most importantly, how they would explain it to me later. Softly, carefully. Like it was fair. Like it made sense. But one sentence stayed with me. Clear, sharp, unavoidable. She'll accept it. She always does. And something about that line did more damage than everything else combined, because it wasn't just about money. It was about certainty. They weren't hoping I'd accept it. They were relying on it. I didn't confront them that night. Didn't argue. Didn't reveal anything. I just stopped the recording and walked away. Because I understood something important. Truth doesn't hit the hardest when it's discovered. It hits the hardest when it's revealed at the right moment. The hardest part wasn't hearing the truth. It was pretending. I hadn't. The next time I saw them, everything looked normal. Same house, same voices, same routine. And I matched it. Same tone, same responses, same silence. They were used to. My mother asked casual questions. My father talked about nothing important. Marcus barely looked at me, and I noticed something. No one was careful anymore, because in their minds, I didn't know. And that belief made them comfortable. And comfortable people stop hiding. A week later, my phone rang. My mother. Her voice was calm, controlled. We're having a family meeting. Meeting. Not dinner, not a visit. A meeting. That word told me everything. Structured, planned, final. And I already knew what it was about, but I didn't react. Of course, I said, like I had no idea, like I was walking into something new. Because sometimes, the strongest position is knowing the truth and letting others believe you don't. Marcus changed that week. Not in a loud way, in a quiet one. He moved differently, spoke differently, more relaxed, more certain, like someone who had already won. He didn't avoid me. He didn't explain anything, because in his mind, there was nothing to explain. Everything was already decided, already his, and confidence like that doesn't come from hope. It comes from certainty. I didn't prepare emotionally. I prepared precisely. I replayed the recording, again and again. Every word, every pause, every tone. Not just listening, studying it. Because this wasn't just proof. It was timing. When to speak. When to stay silent. And most importantly, when the truth would hit the hardest. The day of the meeting, everything felt arranged. Not naturally, intentionally. Chairs placed in a circle, my parents at the center, Marcus beside them, relatives around us, watching, waiting. It didn't feel like a conversation. It felt like something that had already been decided and was now being announced. And I already knew what they were about to say. There's a look people give you when they think they're in control. It's soft, measured, almost sympathetic, like they're preparing you for something you can't change. My parents looked at me like that, like I needed to be handled carefully, like I didn't fully understand what was coming. And for the first time, I realized something clearly. They weren't worried about me. They were managing me. My father cleared his throat. The room went quiet. He looked around, then at me. We've made some decisions about the future. Calm, structured, final. And just like that, everything shifted. People leaned in, listening, waiting for something important. And I sat there, completely still. It all goes to him. No hesitation, no explanation, just a decision. Delivered like it was obvious, like it didn't need discussion. And immediately, the room reacted. Small nods, quiet murmurs. Someone even clapped once, before stopping. Because from the outside, it looked normal, reasonable, fair. Then they looked at me, all of them, waiting, not for agreement, for reaction, shock, confusion, disappointment, anything. That confirmed I wasn't in control. But I didn't give them that. I didn't react, not even slightly. And that confused them more than anything else. And that silence did exactly what I expected. It relaxed them, reassured them, confirmed their belief. She'll accept it, just like they said. And for a moment, they thought it was over, that everything had gone exactly as planned. Until I leaned forward slightly and said one sentence, "Play the recording." And in that moment, everything changed. If you've ever stayed quiet while people underestimated you, you already know how powerful that moment is. Tell me in the comments, would you have exposed them immediately or waited like this? And if you enjoy stories where truth comes out at the perfect moment, subscribe, because what happened next was something they never saw coming. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't question their decision. I just leaned forward slightly, looked at my father, then at my mother, and said one sentence. "Play the recording." Not loud, not emotional, just clear. And for a second, nothing happened. Because they didn't understand. They weren't expecting resistance. They were expecting acceptance. And that difference was the first crack. "What recording?" my mother asked. Her voice was controlled, but not steady. You could hear it, just slightly. People around the table shifted. Someone leaned forward. Someone looked at Marcus, trying to understand, trying to catch up. Because something had changed. Not loudly, but completely. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. Now, it was about something else. Something no one expected. I didn't answer her, because explaining reduces impact. And this moment was about impact. Instead, I reached into my pocket, slowly, deliberately, placed my phone on the table, screen facing up, everyone watching now, no one speaking. And then, I pressed play. No warning, no build-up, just truth. At first, nothing, just sound, low voices, familiar, but unclear. People didn't react immediately. Then, my mother's voice, clear. "She doesn't need to know yet." And something shifted. You could see it. Someone stopped moving their hand. Someone's eyes lifted slowly, because now they recognized it. Then my father's voice. "It'll just complicate things." Clear, unmistakable. And suddenly, there was no confusion anymore, no doubt, no interpretation, because this wasn't my version, it was theirs. In their own words, unfiltered, uncontrolled. Then Marcus. They'll understand eventually. Same voice, same tone. But now, it sounded different. Because context changes everything. Earlier, it sounded confident. Now, it sounded calculated, assumed, entitled. And people noticed. You could see it in their faces. The recording kept playing. No emotion, just decisions, assets, timing, how they would present it, how they would explain it to me, how they expected me to react. "She'll accept it." That line played clearly, and this time, no one saw it as confidence. It sounded like control, like certainty, like I wasn't even part of the decision. No one moved. No one spoke. Not even small reactions anymore. Because moments like this don't create noise. They create stillness. The kind where everything is understood without being said. And in that silence, the truth settled. Heavy. Final. Unavoidable. My mother's face changed first. Just slightly, but enough. The control she had earlier was gone. My father didn't speak, didn't interrupt, didn't even try, because there was nothing to fix. No way to redirect it. No way to explain it. They weren't controlling the moment anymore. They were inside it. When the recording ended, I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because everything had already been said. Not by me, by them. The same room that had accepted their decision was now questioning it. The same people who had agreed were now silent. And for the first time, they weren't controlling the story. They were part of it. If you've ever seen truth come out like this, you know, it doesn't need noise. It just needs the right moment. And what happened next was something they couldn't control anymore. No one spoke. Not immediately, because moments like that don't create reactions. They create realization. You could see it in their faces. Relatives who had just clapped, now completely still. Someone's hands folded slowly. Someone looked down, processing, replaying, because now it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a family decision. It was something else. Something planned. Something hidden. And now, something exposed. The energy in the room changed completely. Before, everything was controlled, directed, structured by my parents. Now, it was uncertain, unstable, because control depends on narrative. And once that breaks, everything follows. No one was looking at Marcus anymore. They were looking at my parents, waiting, not for explanation, for accountability. My mother opened her mouth, tried to speak, anything. But the words didn't come easily anymore, because this wasn't something she could fix with tone, not something she could soften. This isn't what it sounds like. Her voice was quieter, less certain, and for the first time, it didn't work, because everyone in the room knew it was exactly what it sounded like. My father didn't say a word, and that silence was louder than anything else, because he was always the one who explained things, who justified decisions, who made everything sound reasonable. But this time, he had nothing. No explanation. No balance. Because the truth had already been heard. In his own voice. Marcus tried to stay composed. You could see it. The effort. The control slipping. Slowly. His posture changed. His expression tightened. Because confidence built on assumption doesn't survive reality. And now, he wasn't the one receiving something. He was part of something. Something exposed. And for the first time, he didn't look certain. He looked unsure. Then someone asked it. Not loudly, not aggressively, just clearly. Why didn't you tell her? And that question cut deeper than anything else, because it wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about inheritance. It was about intention, about trust, about choosing to hide the truth. No one defended them, not a single person. No one stepped in. No one explained. No one supported. Because when truth is that clear, people don't argue with it. They step back from it. And that distance said everything. The same people who had agreed earlier were now silent, disconnected, watching. And that's when it hit me. Not satisfaction, not victory, something heavier. Because hearing it once, privately, was one thing, but hearing it again, in front of everyone, felt different. More real, more final, because now it wasn't just something I knew, it was something everyone knew. I wasn't upset about the inheritance. My voice was calm, steady, but different now. I was upset that you decided I didn't deserve honesty. And that landed. Not loudly, but deeply, because it changed everything. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about being excluded. On purpose. And just like that, the control they had built for years disappeared. Not because I took it, because they lost it through their own words, their own choices, their own plan. And in that moment, they understood something they never expected. They hadn't just been exposed. They had exposed themselves. If you've ever watched someone lose control because of their own truth, you know, nothing hits harder than that. And what I did next was something they weren't ready for. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't try to prove anything else, because I didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. Not by me, by them. And that's what made it real. Because truth sounds different when it comes from the people trying to hide it. The room didn't react loudly. It shifted, slowly. Conversations stopped. People adjusted in their seats. Eye contact changed. Some avoided looking at my parents. Others looked at me differently. Not with pity, not with sympathy, with understanding. And that meant more than anything they could have said. My mother looked at me. Really looked at me. Not like before. Not like someone controlling a situation, but like someone realizing something too late. There was no calculation left. No control. Just awareness. And maybe regret. My father finally spoke. Quiet. Lower than before. We were trying to avoid conflict. And for a moment, I almost smiled. Because that's what people always say. They don't lie to hurt you. They lie to avoid discomfort. But what they don't understand is, avoiding conflict doesn't remove damage. It just delays it. Marcus said nothing, and that silence felt completely different now. Before, it was confidence. Now, it was emptiness. Because for the first time, he had nothing to stand on. No explanation, no justification. Just the reality of what he had been part of. I don't want anything. I said it calmly, clearly, and the room shifted again. Because that's not what they expected. They thought this was about inheritance, about taking something back. But it wasn't. It was about something they couldn't give me anymore. Trust. That's the part people don't understand. Revenge isn't always loud, it isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet. It's distance. It's choosing not to need anything from people who already decided your place. And that silence, that separation, is heavier than any argument you could ever make. When I stood up, it didn't feel like leaving. It felt like closing something. Not in anger, not in frustration, but in clarity. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for approval, not for fairness, not for explanation. And that changes everything. I didn't look back, because I didn't need to. I already knew what stayed behind. Not the money, not the decision, the moment, the recording, their own voices. That's what follows people. Not what they say in public, but what they say when they think no one is listening. Looking back now, they didn't lose control that day. They lost something else. The ability to define me. Because once you hear the truth clearly enough, you stop asking for permission. You stop needing explanations. And in the end, I didn't expose them to win. I exposed them so I could finally walk away without questions. If this story hit you, don't just watch it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And tell me in the comments, would you have exposed them or stayed silent? And if you've ever been in a situation where people decided your future without you, subscribe, because stories like this are more common than people admit. I'll see you in the next one.